Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Every Which Way podcast. My name is Dana, and it's wonderful to have you here if this is your first time. If you're returning to the podcast, welcome back. It's always wonderful to have you. Shout out to a couple of my buddies, my coven, Jen, of course, the lovely Jen. But we have Carrie and Susan, the good Susan, the only good Susan, Lacey and Shannon. Yeah, how is it going for everybody? How are you guys doing? I'm doing pretty well. Today I made myself some hot buttered apple cider, and let me tell you guys, it is the titties. That is so good. It really is. It's delicious. I highly recommend it. There's a real simple, easy recipe online, and 100% absolutely love it. So, how has everyone been doing? Did you have a good week? My week wasn't too bad. I am glad that it's the weekend, though. Wasn't awful or anything. It just, the days themselves kind of dragged on, but the week itself went by fast, so that makes any sense. But thankfully, we are no longer in the rainy period. The past couple of days has not rained at all, so that's good. The sun is shining today. It's a beautiful day out. I'm loving it. So yeah, even spent some time outside today, finishing up my notes for today's episode, and yeah, before I jump in, I started watching, and I'm caught up now on Agatha All Along on Disney Plus. I've kind of fallen away from Marvel. Like, I was totally on board and on the train right up until Endgame came out. And after Endgame came out, I watched WandaVision, haven't watched anything else until we got to Agatha All Along, and I recommend it. Absolutely. Love it so far. And it's interesting. I can't wait for the next episodes to come on out. But with that being said, what am I talking to you about today? Well, my wonderful friends, my sweet little ooplings, I am talking to you today about a rune. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've talked about a rune, and I was feeling like talking about one. And the one that I'm talking about is Uruz. Hold on one moment. There we go. So, for those of you who are able to watch these, it's this rune. It looks like an upside down U. Or if you want, you can flip it upside down and it looks like a U. But it's that one. So let's get into Uruz. Alrighty, so a few energetic associations. We're going to start right off the bat. Okay, we've got Njord as the primary deity of this. And Njord is the Norse god of the wind and of the sea. And he is actually married to Skadi, who is another Norse deity. Its number is 2, and that makes sense because it is the second rune in the Elder Futhark. The colors that I saw for this rune are green, but also orange and red, but green was kind of like the primary one. Its tree is the elm, though in my research I've also seen birch and oak for the trees for this rune. And the plant is moss. There is no bird that is tied or linked to this rune, but the animal is the aurochs. The element is earth, which makes sense once we get into it. And the stones, the minerals, the crystals, it only has a couple, are amber, garnet, and rock crystal. Astrologically, Uruz is tied to the sign of Taurus and to the moon. And in tarot, it is often correlated with the High Priestess card in the Major Arcana. Phonetically, it's pronounced Uruz, and is the U or V of the alphabet. It, again, visually speaking, it looks like a slightly cockeyed upside down U. And this is to show, for those who watch this, this is to represent the horns of the creature it's tied to, which is the aurochs. A little about the aurochs, since this is an important creature, and especially for this room. Its scientific name is no. Its scientific name is Bos primigenius, of which there are actually 3 main subspecies that branched out and spread throughout Europe, Asia, India, the Mediterranean, and North Africa. There was also a small population that was separate from those subspecies on a small island. I forget the name of the island, but it was such a small species, and I had already taken the notes that I did not write this down, but I am letting you know that I am aware that this thing exists. I just didn't feel like doing more research. So there you go. So let's talk about this animal. So these 3 main subspecies are, the first one is the Bos primigenius, which spanned from the UK and Spain all the way to China and both Koreas. So that large swath across from the British Isles, across the European continent, across parts of Russia, and into China and both Koreas. The second is the Bos primigenius africanus, which occupied northern Africa from Morocco to Egypt. And the third is the Bos primigenius amadicus, which occupied India and parts of northern Pakistan. This is not a creature that currently is alive. This is an extinct animal, and went extinct due to overhunting and habitat loss. So, once again, humanity strikes and we lose a cool thing to our overindulgence. Wow, so glad to be a human, you know? Such good cider. Anyway, its name, aurochs, can be traced back to a few different origins. In Latin, it was Uruz, which meant wild ox. In Germanic, it was Aur, which is A-U-R. The Celtics called it which is U-R. And in Old High German, the that the Celts used was compounded with the oso to create uroso, and that is what would eventually become the word aurochs. It was a part of the Pleistocene megafauna, and it lived alongside the woolly mammoth, the giant tapirs, the woolly rhinos, and the Irish elk. So this creature butted heads with some of the bigwigs of what some people call the Ice Age. The aurochs was one of the largest herbivores in Europe while it was still alive, even rivaling size-wise what is today the African elephant. So this is a big creature, okay? A big thick boy. Its horns averaged around 80 centimeters, or 31 inches, or 0.7874 meters. These horns grew upward, then outward at first, before growing forward, inward, and then up at the tip. So if you've seen pictures of a bull with weird horns that are kind of front-facing, that's what this is. As a creature, it was considered massive, formidable, and adaptable, and could live in swamps, forests, steppes, and mountains. And one last fact about this animal, scientists are actually trying to bring it back from extinction by crossbreeding domestic cattle that have characteristics of the aurochs. And first, it's important to also add in that all of today's domestic cattle can trace their roots, their lineage back to the aurochs. The aurochs was considered the starting point for the domestic cattle breeds and all that. So why talk about the aurochs? Why bring this creature up on a witchy podcast, and especially while talking about a rune? Well, ancient people all over Europe, Africa, and India lived side by side with this incredible creature. It has been depicted in cave paintings, and our ancestors hunted this creature for sustenance, to make use of its hide for shelter and clothing, and of course to use its horns as well. It wasn't just hunted, but it was also, in some cultures and some tribes in some areas, worshipped or seen as a sacred animal due to its physical vitality, its raw animal power, and its tenacity. Because we have to keep into account that while these creatures were eventually domesticated, and they were like twice from the research that I did and what I saw, they were still very unruly, and they weren't always domesticated. They were still, at one point, a wild animal. And wild animals are not going to play nice. They're not going to do things, go figure, that you would want them to do. And, yeah. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. It happens a lot. So let's use what we've learned about what we've learned so far to bridge that gap between the aurochs and Uruz. The most obvious thing is that visually, it represents the horns of the aurochs, as depicted in that cockeyed, weird U shape. And of course, the horns of it are very distinct. I read that the Romans would use the horns for hunting horns and stuff like that. But these horns were also used to kind of do what bulls do today, I guess. I never lived on a farm, and compete for the sexual... compete for mating. That's what I've been trying to say. To compete for mating. However, and to clash. You did not want to be on the receiving end of these horns. They hurt a lot. But it's not just the physical aspects that combine these two. Uruz as a rune represents, spiritually, strength and courage. This is not a sweet, dainty, delicate rune. It is one that represents primal power, uncontained by societal rules or restrictions. And it's also a rune of challenge. Challenge that could be an everyday decision that you have to make, but more often than not leans more toward the destiny-altering or life-changing challenges. And challenges and hardships are a part of life. At some point, everyone has to experience or face them. As a young person, going through some life-altering or major change is sort of like an initiation into adulthood, a rite of passage, if you will. Many hardships can make or break a person, more often than not leading to some sort of death or even an extinction. of an old way of living or being. But this is also a rune of choice and an opportunity. Will you give up, let your own tragedies consume you and die? Or will you find something to learn in the obstacles that you face? Will you adapt and grow and live? It takes pure strength and courage to smile and live after experiencing an awful tragedy or event that befalls you. I think that everyone, let's take the passing of a relative, especially one that is close to you. You grieve that because you cared for it and you cared very deeply for it, but nothing lasts forever, and it's a natural part of life. And while it may take a long time for some people, you will eventually smile again and be able to laugh, even if in the moment while you are suffering you may think that you will never be able to do that. I hope that makes sense. Love it. Where was I? In a reading, Uruz could indicate healing or some sort of strength or vitality returning to you after a period of illness or low energy. Because remember, this is not just a rune of that courage and that power, but also a vitality. The vitality to continue and that will to continue. Perhaps you've been second guessing your own prowess, your own abilities, your own resourcefulness, things that you're just second guessing yourself. Uruz showing up in a reading in that scenario is a sign that, yes, actually, you do have the power and determination to pull through any obstacles in your path, and you've always had. You just need to be reminded of it, or to get the sense knocked into you and realize, oh, hey, I can actually do this, despite what the little voice in my head, or despite what Dave from accounting says. Fuck you, Dave, by the way. I don't work in an accounting firm, but listen, it was a thing. Let's move on. If there is something that you've been wanting to try, so like maybe a class or a project, or maybe even just going on a weekend excursion to maybe someplace that you've never been, this pulling Uruz is a sign that you have the confidence and the courage to take that first step into the unknown, to venture out and do the thing anyway, even if it scares you, even if you're uncertain and the outcome has yet to make itself known. Even if things don't go as planned, you have the capability to handle whatever is thrown at you and to make it through. And in a new class, in a new setting, if you're thinking about going for it, but maybe you're just a little scared, this rune is showing up, is kind of that friend that just pushes you, go do it, you know you can do it, stop hesitating, just do the thing, okay? I hope that makes sense. Uruz is also a reminder that death and darkness are a part of life and are necessary for growth, positive growth. The new life that will stem from the corpse of the old one will be greater, and it will be for your highest good. This isn't a rune that's like, something's going to come in front of you just for shits and giggles. No. Even the most trying and difficult and heartbreaking things that we go through and that we experience provide some sort of lesson or knowledge to be gained. It is up to us as the person to take that step to find that lesson and that knowledge and to incorporate it into our lives, to not be swallowed by our own darkness or even to fear it, but to see it as part of who we are. We are not just all either light or darkness. Life is not just black or white, it's gray. We're a mix. And to deny ourselves that part, that darker side, is to deny half of who you are. And perhaps in a reading, you're contemplating that and focusing on that. Uruz popping up is a sign that the darkness within you is supposed to be there. You are supposed to have this balance of the good and the bad, the light and the dark. That's how all things are. There's a bright side and there's a bad side to everything. There's a positive and a negative. It's all about balancing. Letting yourself be consumed by that darkness and just falling into it and staying there is not healthy for you. That's not living in balance. That's not for your greatest good. That's just you staying there, possibly because it's comfortable at a certain point. And as someone who does go through points of very low energy and whose thoughts sometimes consume my head, and sometimes without, most oftentimes, to be honest with you, without my permission, it can be hard to get yourself out of that rut, and it can be. I'm not saying that's not. I've had experience with it. It sucks. But we have that choice of being like, you know what, I'm not listening to this voice in my head. I'm tired of it. I want to go out and step into the sun. Maybe this nagging, malicious voice in my head is bringing this stuff up, whatever past things, to have me learn, hey, the fact that you farted really loudly in your one class in 8th grade and that all of your classmates laughed at you, not speaking from experience, that's okay. It's okay. It happened. And while you were embarrassed as all hell, you made some people laugh. And maybe someone who laughed needed that day. I mean, yeah, some people in that scenario, again, not mine, in that scenario, some people were doing it to be jerks and to be malicious. But maybe one person in that class just needed a good belly laugh. Okay? But it's important to recognize and live with that darkness, to be willing to step into it when you need to, but to not stay there. The dark part is not for us to live in. It is both a protector and a challenger. It is there to protect us from things that outwardly try to assault us, but when the time comes and we need to grow in order to obtain our highest self, it's going to be that push, whether you like it or not, to get you on the ball and to get you rolling. I hope that makes sense. Hold on just one moment. I'm going to pause to take a sip of my drink. Just one little pause. And we're back. As a warning, Uruz cautions us that too much of that wild primal energy can have harmful or negative effects if left unchecked for too long. When drawn in a fit of emotional upset, Uruz is asking for you to pause, take a step back, breathe, and center yourself. And once you're calmer and in a calmer frame of mind, that is when you form your response, your next move, or your next course of action when it is drawn in that circumstance. Uruz can also caution us to not let our own power or strength go to our head or cloud our judgment. It is one thing to have the power and the strength to protect and defend. It is another thing to use that same power and strength to oppress the people under you. In other words, don't be a bull in a china shop, okay? You don't want to wreck everything that is delicate and fragile around you. You want to be conscientious of the world around you, and that your own power, your own abilities, your own strength, if you let that consume you and get too much in your head, can hurt those around you. Maybe you're not intending it, but it can happen. So Uruz is asking you to, hey, chill the fuck out. And this rune can also be pulled in reverse. Oh my gosh! Yes, it can be. It can be. And when it is telling us that if we aren't currently struggling, we will be soon. Or that we're struggling to overcome the obstacle or challenge that is blocking us from proceeding forward. It could also indicate ill health, mental vulnerability, or oversensitivity is either what our issue currently is when it's drawn, or are on the horizon if you're not careful and alert. And it's serving as a warning of, hey, if you don't do something, you could succumb to these for a while, and who wants that? If you are clashing with someone, or maybe you have a feud or a disagreement with a person, a reversed Uruz could be a warning that your own strength and power are going to be used against you or reflected back to you in some manner. In some manner, especially, that could be detrimental or harmful to you. So be on the lookout with that. Lastly, a reversed Uruz may be a warning that an opportunity or a choice for something or some sort of change that maybe isn't one of those big life-altering mamma jamma changes, but a change nonetheless that may present itself to you. A reversed Uruz being pulled in regards to that is indicating that, hey, this choice, this opportunity will not serve your highest good, and it would be more beneficial for you to stand still and not proceed. Again, bull in a china cabinet. If the bull is just standing there and not moving at all, everything is fine. Nothing gets destroyed. Okay? And really, that's all I have for you today. That is Uruz. I hope that that was informative to you and that you enjoyed learning about Uruz and the Aurochs as well. I know that I certainly do. As someone who, when I was a child, actually no, even now, I love dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs so much. When I was a child, I wanted to be a paleontologist. I couldn't even spell paleontology, but I wanted to be a paleontologist. And I've always had that love and fascination for ancient life and the ancient world. Before everything died and before humans came into their own and usurped the world from the animal kingdom, I am just so fascinated with it. I find it so interesting, and I love dinosaurs, and I love just ancient prehistoric beasts. So being able to learn about a creature that is part of that was really a nice little yummy treat for me. So I enjoyed it very much. Before I sign off and let you guys go, I would just like to remind you that after this episode, there's just going to be 2 more weeks of normal episodes, and on the 28th of October is going to be our next Halloween special, our big Samhain special, the second Samhain special of the podcast. And I hope that you tune in. I don't really know what I'm going to be covering, but I think it'll be something good. I'm pretty sure it's going to be something good. And I think you guys will enjoy it, whatever it is. I'll be looking and perusing through topics here sometime this week, and then we can start a little bit of research and get ahead. And yeah, but that is all I have for you today. I would like to take the time to thank you for tuning into this podcast. If you could do me a big favor, if you could follow, if you could share this around, if you could leave a review, that would be great. That would help me out immensely. And I know it gets really tiring and boring listening to creators spout this same rhetoric over and over again, but we do it because it genuinely does help and boost our numbers. And yeah, I hope that you all have a marvelously magical Monday, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye!